Nader, you've spoken very, very eloquently tonight about family values and the need for all of us to work together to make the country better. You've spoken even more eloquently about the criminal war that's now taking place in Iraq that was fomented and arranged by a criminal element, Bush and Cheney. Why do you feel 3,100 lives is worth you pushing your version of where we're going?
Because Gore won the election. It was stolen from Tallahassee to Washington.
That doesn't fly.
Wait, just a minute.
That doesn't fly.
Let's see what else. Just a moment. Let's see what else flies. If you don't think stealing an election in a series of events before, during, and after the election day in 2000 is sufficient, let's see what else flies. 250,000 Democrats in Florida voted for Bush. 5 minority party candidates had far more votes that would have gone to Bush than the difference between Bush and Gore before the Supreme Court of Florida was prevented from a whole state recount. He didn't win his home state of Tennessee, which usually presidential candidates do. That would have won the election. He didn't win his home state of Arkansas. That would have won the election. And I can give you a dozen other what-ifs. And it's interesting that you just pick on the Green Party what-if. And why do you think I'm a second-class citizen? Would you think the anti-slavery party was second class? Would you think that people shouldn't have voted for the women's right to vote party or the worker party and the farmer progressive party in the 19th century? And we handed Gore the issues he could have won, but he wasn't courageous enough to pick them up. Ones that the old Democratic Party would have known. Living wage, a real unified universal health care. Truman would have adopted that. Kennedy would have adopted that. FDR would have adopted that. These two parties have made our elections a commodity to sell. They have gerrymandered districts where they deprive you of the choice of a competitive two-party system. We handed Gore, and we sent it to him. We handed Gore and his associates these issues. And we said, we're inside the electoral arena. You want to take our issues so you take our votes? Be our guest. I went around the country tearing Bush apart in terms of his Texas record, which the Democrats failed to do. They could have listened to that. They could have picked up some of these passages. They could have landslided George W. Bush and sent him back to Crawford, Texas. Second, the war in Iraq. The Democrats could have blocked them on the war if they had courage in Congress. They could have blocked them on the Patriot Act. They could have blocked them on the tax cuts for the rich. I would never in 1,000 years deny you the right to run for office, no matter what your position was, because that is the First Amendment right of our Constitution. You can argue with me, but to tell me I shouldn't have run is to tell me I shouldn't have spoken, I shouldn't have petitioned, I shouldn't have assembled. That is unacceptable.
The idea of having this democratic system is awesome. It's powerful, and voting is so important. But unfortunately, when someone lays out 5 choices for you, you truly don't get the freedom of choice. You get the freedom of options. And right now, our democratic system is that we have multinational organizations and big money getting and funding and backing options. So we have these options to pick from, and some might be better than others, but they still have someone's strings tied to their mouths, to their hands, to their policies. And that's sort of where I stand on our democracy.
The idea of having a real third-party candidate actually be on the debates would be a good start. Since we can't even get, a Ralph Nader to participate in the debates because corporations have convinced everybody that there really are only 2 ways to look at it. I think that democracy is a big lie, to be honest with you. When you get the media involved and all the airtime only reflects the opinion and the agenda of the corporations that are backing the candidates, it doesn't really give a chance for the voice of the people to be heard. And what's sadder is that the media has convinced people that this is the way in which they actually do think. The media plays to the fact that there's a lot of polarization, when in fact if you go out and talk to the majority of the people, it doesn't really exist. Wholly uneducated folks really cling to this two-party idea, increasingly what we're finding is Americans are pissed off and disillusioned with the entire system because it is broken and because it is under corporate control, and every day that becomes more and more glaring. How do you break that? How do you get out of it? I don't really see any end to it. I know that's sad, but it's increasingly I try and find happiness without it, because it's never going to be the voice of me and the voice of most of the people that I know, because we don't really care about profit.
The CPD, the Commission on Presidential Debates, was established, I think it was mid-'80s. They basically began to draw the rules in such a way that it would prohibit third parties from ever having a televised voice. And the reason a televised voice is so important in our country is because everyone looks to the television as their source of reality, what's going on out there. If you're not on TV, you really don't exist. You can be marginalized, and the media will only exacerbate that because they're interested in sensationalism. Madris says we're in a period now that's past the time for third parties. I would just offer that that's an uninformed, dismissive outlook that you only have if you're not paying attention. The third party people have always been the only source of change we've ever had.
Let me ask you this. If you had lived in the early part of the 20th century and somebody had come to you and said, don't vote for Eugene Debs, the candidate that supports the right of women to vote, because you're throwing your vote away. He's only going to get 5 or 6% of the vote. You're throwing your vote away. What would you have done? Well, first off, all the women in the room, you wouldn't have been able to vote. So my question is for the men. What would you have done? And for the women, what would you have wanted them to do? What would you want them to do? You would want them to say, I'm sorry. This is an important enough issue now that needs to be dealt with now. It is not something where we're going to allow the major candidates in contention to talk about, well, maybe women, when they reach the age of 30, maybe if they, all of this rubbish that we cannot even repeat today because it sounds so damn foolish. Fast forward to today. Here we are. What are we doing? We're fighting to get into debates. What's wrong with that? This is a democracy. So what does the other side tell you? They say, these guys are irrelevant. We don't debate them because they're irrelevant. Oh, is that right? You heard Governor Ventura say he got in debates and started to do great. When I ran for mayor of San Francisco, I started with 6% in the polls in 2003. They let me in the debates. I ended up with 47% of the vote. I didn't win the contest, but that is a hell of a difference. Imagine that. They don't want us in the debate because they don't want to debate our ideas. They want to marginalize us. They want you to believe that you're throwing your vote away if you're with us. I was over at the Excel Center, and one of the conservative radio talk people that I don't know was saying to me, don't know because I don't listen to them, saying to me, well, why do you think you should be allowed to debate Governor Palin and Senator Biden? I said, well, first off, I was president of the Board of Supervisors of San Francisco. Okay, the budget of San Francisco is over $6 billion. The budget of Alaska is a little over $3 billion. The budget of Delaware is a little over $3 billion. Senator Biden got less votes when he got elected to the Senate than I did when I ran for, mayor. Are you with me? Do you see how ridiculous this is? It's really incredible to listen to the convention last week, the Democratic National Convention, and the mantra that I kept hearing over and over again was about how the Republicans had done this to us and Bush had done that to us, and how we had to reverse these terrible crimes against us. But the part that was missing was an acknowledgement by the Democrats that they had been complicit in George Bush's agenda.